Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're trying to cut through, well, frankly, a lot of noise surrounding one of the most powerful figures on the global stage, Xi Jinping.
That's right.
We're going to track the life of arguably the most significant Chinese leader since Mao Zedong. We'll use the source material to map out that psychological journey, from a revolutionary son to this singular core leader of China.
And it really is more than just a standard political biography we're looking at here. It reads like a political thriller, honestly, spanning decades.
Yeah.
The sources paint this picture of a relentless, almost you could say, desperate drive for absolute control. And it seems this isn't just about power for power's sake. It really seems rooted in this deep, fundamental fear that the Communist Party itself could just collapse.
Catastrophe in his view.
The ultimate disaster, yeah. And likely fueled by the traumas he experienced growing up.
That really feels like the key, doesn't it? So this deep dive, it should give you a framework to see how that personal history, the upheaval, the loyalty he had to earn, and this intense focus on party survival, how it all merged, how it created a leader who, well, now consistently seems to put ideology and stability above almost everything else, even things like conventional economic growth. Hashtag chapter 1, the making of a prince. Okay, so let's unpack that first act. His origins. The whole idea of the red aristocracy. Xi Jinping, born 1953, Beijing, son of Xi Zongsun, a big name, a high-ranking communist veteran, a vice premier. So that put the young Xi right in the middle of the princelings, didn't it? The children of the revolution's elite.
It did, but that privilege didn't last long at all, that protective political shield. It got ripped away when she was just 10 years old.
10? Wow.
Yeah, 1963. His father gets purged from the CCP. And why? Simply for, well, praising an official who'd already fallen out of favor. That moment itself was a harsh political lesson for the whole family. But the real crisis, the one that truly shaped things, was the Cultural Revolution.
Yeah, the devastation sounds just profound. It kicks off in 66, right? Stops his schooling cold. We know the family home was ransacked. His mother forced publicly to denounce her own husband who was in prison. And then, tragically, his sister Hiping commits suicide. His father's locked away by 68.
I mean, these aren't just political bumps in the road. This is deep, formative psychological trauma we're talking about.
Right.
So at 15, she gets exiled, sent off to the countryside, Yanshan County, in Shaanxi specifically, very rural.
Part of Mao's down to the countryside movement.
Exactly. And for 7 years, he's living in a Kate house, a yadong. He talked about it later, described overcoming these 5 hurdles: fleas, food, just basic life, labor, and even thought. Just to get by.
It still seems so contradictory, though. The party persecutes his family like this, yet he seems almost fanatically determined to join the very same organization. How do the sources make sense of that pivot?
Well, his reaction is maybe the single most critical piece to understanding his entire philosophy now. Despite everything, he applies to join the CCP 10 times.
10 times.
10 times before they finally let him in 1974. His decision, it seems, was to survive by becoming redder than red. And crucially, his takeaway from the Cultural Revolution wasn't that the party's ideology was flawed. No. It was that the party had suffered a catastrophic loss of control.
Controlverlust.
Exactly. The German term political analysts sometimes use Controlverlust. That experience of total chaos became the absolute bedrock of his obsession with stability. Political stability, ideological stability.
So after the chaos dies down, those bloodlines, they do eventually start to matter again, allowing him back to Beijing, to Tsinghua University for chemical engineering.
And that loyalty, that persistence, it pays off almost immediately. When he graduates in 79, he doesn't just get some ordinary job. No, you become secretary to the defense minister, Geng Biao.
A powerful connection.
Hugely powerful. And it was possible because his father had been politically rehabilitated under Deng Xiaoping by then. So that whole saga, the fall, the hardship, the return, it just cemented his worldview. Stability is paramount. And you only achieve it through centralized, unwavering, loyal power, not through the kind of revolutionary chaos or, democratic upheaval he'd witnessed firsthand. Hashtag chapter 2, the path of power.
Okay, so he's established that loyalty is key. Where does he actually learn the ropes of governing? His climb starts, 1982? Zhengding County in Hudi.
Yeah, that's right.
And he makes a name for himself pretty quickly with practical stuff, like reducing excessive requisitions on farmers, starting tourism projects. Wasn't there something about a TV show?
Yeah, the Rongo Mansion. built specifically as a filming base for the classic Dream of the Red Mansions. Smart move, actually.
But his overall rise, it seems marked by
Right.
keeping a low profile.
Very much so. Insiders apparently called it the art of invisibility. He was methodical, didn't take big risks, stayed away from controversy, and that approach became quite strategic later on. Think about when he gets suddenly moved to Shanghai in 2007. He's replacing a party secretary who'd just been purged for corruption, a politically radioactive situation.
Right.
So what does Xi do? He deliberately focuses on preserving unity, sticking rigidly to party discipline. There's that anecdote that stands out in the sources about him refusing a special train they offered him for his commute.
He took a van instead.
Took a regular van. He was sending a very clear signal. I'm clean, I follow the rules, I'm a manager, not some grandstanding politician looking for perks.
And those local government roles, they really honed his skills, didn't they? Later in Ningde, Fujian, he's tackling serious poverty, something he even wrote a book about, getting out of poverty.
Correct.
And then as governor, Fujian, he has to handle the fallout from that huge yuanhua smuggling case. That must have been early direct experience with really entrenched corruption.
Absolutely. But it was probably the Zhejiang years, 2002 to 2007, that really put him on the map for the top job.
Because of the economy.
Partly, yes. Incredible growth, averaging, 14% a year? And he pioneers this double-eight strategy with Li Qiang, who'd later become a key ally. But it was more than just growth.
Okay.
This period built his national reputation. He was seen as someone incredibly tough on corrupt officials, but who could also deliver rapid, visible economic results. He showed he could manage both sides, the economy and the political machinery.
And then there's the personal life aspect. His marriage in 1987 to Peng Liyuan, the famous folk singer.
Oh, that was hugely significant. Peng Liyuan wasn't just known, she was a massive cultural icon, a superstar.
Much more famous than him at the time.
Initially, yes, far more famous. Her public profile, her sort of cultural resonance, it played this huge symbolic role later on. It helped project an image of, normalcy, cultural connection, sort of soft power counterpoint to Xi's reputation as this quiet, disciplined technocrat. It definitely made his final elevation smoother, more palatable to the public. Chapter 3 of the coronation.
So by 2007, he makes it. Appointed to the Politburo Standing Committee, the PSC, that really positions him as Hu Jintao's likely successor.
Presumed successor, yeah.
But it wasn't a done deal, was it? There was real political drama brewing with Bo Xilai. The party secretary in Chongqing, very charismatic, very ambitious, looked like he might actually challenge Xi.
Oh, Bo Xilai was a genuine political phenomenon. He had national appeal, pushed this sort of neo-Maoist revival, the Chongqing model. Xi even had to cautiously praise Bo's policies back in 2010.
Really?
Yes, it shows how serious a threat Bo was perceived to be, particularly to the sort of delicate collective leadership system they'd built after Mao. Bo's power was peaking right before his incredibly sudden, dramatic downfall. It all unraveled with the Wang Lijun incident, Bo's police chief trying to defect to the U.S. consulate, just explosive stuff.
And that scandal basically just cleared the path for Xi, right? Took out his main rival.
Absolutely. It removed any credible challenger.
Yeah.
That power vacuum, or rather the consolidation after it, directly enabled Xi's formal accession in November 2012.
Elected General Secretary, Chairman of the Central Military Commission, paramount leader.
And significantly, the first CCP General Secretary born after the PRC was actually founded in 1949, a generational shift.
Looking back at his first speech as leader, the style is quite striking, isn't it? Especially compared to how he speaks now.
It was incredibly calculated. He deliberately avoided the usual party jargon, the dense political slogans his predecessors loved.
Spoke plainly.
Very plainly. Focused on everyday aspirations, better education, more income, Social Security people could rely on. It was all about crafting this image, contrasting sharply with the Bo Xilai chaos, projecting himself as a leader focused on the people's actual lives.
And that image building didn't stop. His trip to Guangdong in December 2012, that directly echoed Deng Xiaoping's famous 1992 Southern tour, didn't it?
A very deliberate echo. That's where he introduces his signature slogan, the Chinese Dream, emphasizing both, economic reform, but also significantly a stronger military, setting the stage.
Yeah.
And again, you see these small details reinforcing the narrative, the people's leader narrative. He eats at the regular hotel buffets, travels in a simple van, doesn't have traffic blocked off for him.
Projecting humility.
Projecting humility while, behind the scenes, preparing for this massive centralization of power. And the final vote, when he was formally elected president in March 2013, it just confirmed his grip. Only one vote against, 3 abstentions. Almost unprecedented unity. at least on the surface. Hashtag chapter 4, the consolidation.
So once he's firmly in place, he launches arguably his biggest domestic initiative, that huge anti-corruption campaign, vowing to root out both tigers and flies.
High-ranking officials and lowly bureaucrats alike.
It was presented as vital for the party's health, but right away, critics started asking if it had a dual purpose.
And the scale was just breathtaking. The campaign brought down figures people thought were completely untouchable.
Like Zhao Yongkang.
Exactly, a former PSC member. And top military brass like Xu Kaihu and Guo Baxiong, former CMC vice chairman. Huge figures. Now, was there genuine corruption being tackled? Undoubtedly. But critics strongly argue this was also the most effective political purge since Mao's era. It systematically eliminated potential rivals, anyone who could challenge his authority, and consolidated his personal control.
Is there institutional evidence for that?
Look at the creation of the National Supervision Commission. Its rank, higher than the Supreme Court. That tells you where the real power and accountability now lie firmly within the party structure he controls.
And alongside these purges, we see this relentless tightening of control over information, right? Censorship, mass surveillance, it all seems to ramp up significantly under Xi.
Systematically. He even laid down that explicit rule. Party and government-owned media must hold the family name of the party. No ambiguity there.
Back to that fear of losing control.
It's a direct policy outcome of that control-for-lust fear. Xi genuinely seems to view any erosion of ideological control, any independent centers of information or power, as an existential threat to the party's survival.
And this shifts policy priorities.
Absolutely. Ideology starts to dominate everything. If you look at his big 2022 speech, for instance, the analysis shows he mentioned Marx more than twice as often as he mentioned the market.
Wow.
For Xi, it seems, the economy is ultimately secondary. The party's ideological purity and its political grip come first.
Meanwhile, globally, he's launching the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, this massive infrastructure project. It's designed to build Chinese economic influence everywhere, isn't it? Particularly Africa, Eurasia.
It's vast. And we need to be clear, this is the centerpiece of what he calls major country diplomacy, meaning a strategy designed to project a much more assertive China onto the world stage. It involves pushing concepts like the Global Development Initiative, the GDI. His ultimate goal, which he's stated quite openly, is for China to, quote, lead the world in terms of composite national strength and international influence by 2049.
The centenary of the PRC.
Exactly. It's a long-term vision, but the foundations are being laid now, very assertively. Hashtag chapter 5, the Emperor's Era.
Then comes perhaps the defining political move of his entire tenure so far, 2018. The National People's Congress amends the Constitution, removing presidential term limits.
A seismic shift. It completely overturned the collective leadership norms, the checks and balances, however imperfect, that had governed the party since Deng Xiaoping tried to prevent another Mao situation.
How did he justify it?
Officially, the rationale was about aligning the presidency, which had term limits, with the posts of General Secretary and CMC Chairman, which didn't, for consistency. But the practical effect was undeniable. It paved the way for his unprecedented third term in 2022-2023. He became the first leader since Mao set up for indefinite rule, essentially.
And his foreign policy, it's also become much sharper, much more confrontational in recent years. We hear terms like baseline thinking, setting clear red lines, and that very aggressive wolf warrior diplomacy.
Yeah, Xi seems to view the entire world through this lens of system competition. He genuinely appears to believe history is on China's side, famously stating that the East is rising and the West is declining.
And then that translates into policy.
Directly. You see it most clearly on issues like Taiwan. He maintains the absolute right to use force, especially against what he calls external interference or any separatist moves. The rhetoric is much tougher, the military posturing more frequent.
Finally, let's talk about legacy. There's clearly a massive effort to cultivate a cult of personality, isn't there? Reviving titles like Lingxiu Leader or People's Leader, titles really only associated with Mao before him.
And his childhood village, Liangjie, it's basically been turned into a propaganda shrine, a place of pilgrimage celebrating his early hardships and resolve.
And Xi Jinping Thought.
Now, enshrined not just in the party constitution, but the state constitution too. It's mandatory study. His absolute focus on centralizing power, especially over the military. It's all justified internally by pointing to the Soviet Union's collapse.
He blames their military becoming depoliticized.
Exactly. For him, that's the ultimate cautionary tale, the path to ruin. One observer had a really interesting take saying, Xi didn't wait for the apple of global power and ambition to fully ripen. He grabbed the unripe but edible apple much earlier than anyone expected.
Forcing the system to change around him.
Forcing the political norms to shift, yeah, all seemingly aimed at securing his own monumental place in Chinese history.
So this deep dive, it really paints a picture of a leader shaped by paradox, doesn't it? A princeling by birth, yet forged in the fires of rural poverty and intense political chaos. And that deeply personal experience of turmoil seems to drive everything, this total commitment to party stability, party control above all else.
Yeah, that history really does seem to be the engine driving his entire approach to governance. You can trace almost every major policy back to it. The power consolidation, the anti-corruption drive, rewriting ideology, the global ambitions, it all feels interconnected.
Rooted in that core experience.
And fueled by that fundamental belief that only the CCP is capable of governing China. That seems non-negotiable for him.
Which leads to the final thought, maybe. Xi constantly justifies his indefinite rule, his methods, by saying essentially, without stability and unity, nothing else counts.
Right.
So the provocative question for you, the listener, to think about is, what gets sacrificed for that stability? What potential, what dynamism, maybe even what freedoms are curtailed when stability becomes the absolute overriding priority?
And what happens to a system, a huge complex system like China's, when the only way to legitimately challenge the leader is seen by that leader himself as a fundamental loss of control, as treason, essentially?
Where does that leave dissent, or even just course correction?
That really is the central question surrounding power without end.
Something to consider. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.